And Conversations That Convert, we're going to talk about how to create an online emotional connection with new home buyers. So let's get started.
Welcome to Conversations That Convert. Every week, we'll spend about 10 to 15 minutes tackling relevant lead generation, marketing, and sales topics for remodelers, home improvement companies, and home builders. Conversations That Convert is brought to you by Builder Lead Converter, your perfect sales assistant. And now, here's Rick and Diana.
Hey, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Diana is off today as we have a special guest with us, which I will introduce here shortly. Again, our topic is creating an online emotional connection with new home leads. And we have a special guest with us today. His name is Greg Bray from Blue Tangerine. So Greg, welcome to Conversations That Convert. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me, Rick. This is fun.
It is fun. Yes, it is. It is fun. And in a second here, we're going to play chess or checkers with Greg's background. I forget, Greg, what we discussed, but uh, we're happy to have you on. We've known each other for a very long time. But why don't you introduce the audience a little bit more to who you are, how are you where you are, and what's been your journey through life to land you here talking with me on Conversations That Convert.
Well, this is the pinnacle of my journey of life, landing
Oh my
here,
gosh.
right? Yeah, there we go.
It's getting thick in here, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, Rick, I've been in the web development profession, I guess, for my whole career. I did my first home builder website back in 2000. Which is, gosh, I've earned my gray hair is what I like to say now. But I own or co-own and lead the team at Blue Tangerine. We are a digital marketing and website development agency that specializes in the home builder industry. So we like to help builders build a better website, drive more traffic, and convert more leads from their website. And so we do all the things that go into that. And again, my personal background is more on the development side, but I've had to learn a lot of marketing because the website is always integral into the whole marketing journey as well.
Yep. And I come from a marketing background and know really not very much about website development. So I guess we have yin and yang here. So this should be a fun interview. But let's jump right into it. And thank you for your background. But let's start off with just Greg is trying to establish this baseline of why it's so important to understand the emotional component of people's decision-making process.
I think if we are all honest with ourselves, and if we also look at the research, all of our decision making is emotional first, right? It's one of those things that we don't like to admit because it somehow sounds like we're doing something wrong if we make
being
emotional,
manipulated.
emotional decisions. But when you really step and look back at the psychologists and the neuroscientists and all these folks, everything we do is emotional first, and then we use logic and data and facts to kind of support our decisions, to back it up and to justify it, right? So there was a quote I saw once, and I apologize, I can't remember the person, but it's like, we're feeling creatures that think, right? And so this idea that everything we do starts with this emotional connection reaction standpoint, all of our decision making, not just purchase decisions. And of course, marketers have figured this out for a long time, and they know how to kind of pull those emotional strings, if you will, to get us to connect and want something or to desire things and then to make purchases.
It's interesting you mentioned that neurolinguistics. Years ago, I was involved with a woman-centric program from design, I think it was design graphics, but they create floor plans out in Nebraska, but they came up with this program and they were to educate home builders on the purchasing behavior. And of course, it all went back to the study that showed that women, I think, account for it's something like 84% of all household decisions as far as purchase making decisions. And of course, if someone wants to build a new home or remodel their home, it's typically women that start it. So it makes a lot of sense in that women are certainly more feeling oriented than probably men. And the fact that more often than not, women are making the decision of where they want to move, and sometimes they're dragging a significant other along with them, makes a lot of sense. Is that that emotional component of the website would be so critical. Do you agree with that? With that analysis of that, women are typically the decision makers, or at least the initial decision makers, when it comes to making the decision to research for a new home?
I certainly believe the information that women kind of lead the home buying and home renovation type decisions. I I agree that men and women are very different.
You think?
Yeah, I'm just going to go on record here. However, I do not believe that it's true that men are not emotional decision makers. Right? Our emotions are different. Our emotions may be triggered by different things, but whether it's a new home or a new truck, it's there's still this emotional component to this choice that we make of whether we want that or need that, and is it rational, air quotes, right, irrational or not, to spend our money on something, or is it just because we feel that need. So yes, are the emotions of men and women very different? Absolutely, but still there's an emotional component for
Yep,
decision making.
absolutely. I heard something interesting today, just from one of the people on my team, and she said that she feels like when it's moving out of the home, out of the parents' homes, and actually getting your own nest. So whether that's an apartment or your first time home you're buying, what have you, is that her feelings is that women, that was more important to a woman than it was to a man. Is that a man might stay in the with his parents a little bit longer, where women were more, they had a greater desire to actually get out and get their own place. So that was just her anecdotal evidence, but maybe that's true, maybe it isn't true. Obviously, we're dealing with now a generation that's buying right now, in the first-time home buyers, that either stayed with mom and dad a long time, a lot longer than we thought they would, or they stayed in a rental, delayed getting married, delayed having children, and then all of a sudden now here comes 2020, COVID hits, a lot of civil unrest in more urban areas, and all of a sudden the desire for this younger generation to actually get out and buy their first home is great. And I assume, do you, well, I shouldn't assume, I guess, your question. So how do you feel about, where your website as a home builder, um, needs to appeal to your target market, and that younger demographic is probably even more likely to start their conversations, or at least their relationship with a home builder, through an online platform like a website, or a WhatsApp, or Facebook messaging, or Instagram messaging?
Yeah, I think the part that builders may not realize, they've been doing this since we moved out of caves, right? And this idea that you're selling something that doesn't exist yet, especially a to be built home, right? Whether that's a custom home, or even a production builder that doesn't have specs available, to work with. You're creating a dream, right? You're creating a vision of what you will have when we're done with this process, and that's emotional in and of itself, right? So again, I like to say, builders have been selling dirt and a dream for forever, right? Because you have these pictures of just this big empty lot with nothing on it, and there's no roads, there's no trees, and it's like, this is going to be beautiful, I promise. It's going to be fabulous. You're going to love living here. That's emotional, right? That's an
Absolutely.
emotional piece of this whole selling process. So again, we've been doing that, quote, offline since the beginning of home construction as an industry. So now, how do we start to do the same thing online, and be able to help translate that same vision, that same dream of what are they going to have when this process finishes, is really, I think, the heart of it. And so if you kind of step back and go, we've been doing that, I think it's not quite such a leap when you start thinking about how do we do that online.
Yep. And I think, to set the stage here for anyone listening and watching, is, so we have this emotional process that, I agree, yeah, we all buy emotionally, we justify logically. That's sales 101. We've known that as an old sales guy, we've known that forever. So we're looking at what does that look like digitally. But I think the thing that I really want to convey here, Greg, and I know you do too, is that so often as a builder, is that we look at the model homes, our brochures, our business cards, our logo, our branding. And we look at all this stuff, but we really don't look at what we should be scrutinizing the most, is our website, which is essentially where that's our storefront, where people are going first. And sometimes that gets left in the background. Not always. The builders that really understand it. They put that to the forefront. But so often I think that that's like an afterthought for a lot of builders, especially as a lot of people are busy right now and they think like, well, I just don't have time to keep up with the website. Um, Boy, what a key component it is. But let's keep moving along that emotional decision making process. And how does that factor into the home buying process?
So I think when you really start to think about, all right, people start their research online, right? So they're in this research phase of where do I want to live, what's available to me, what options, what pricing, all of these questions that they have even before they start to talk to a builder, right? So if you've done a Google search, Rick, and you don't know anything about a topic and you starting that research, what is the first thing that you see when you do a Google search on something brand new that you don't know anything about, right? It's a bajillion results, that Google puts in front of you.
Ads, organic. I mean, yeah, if it's mobile, it's different than desktop. And yeah, you're right.
So there's just almost this overwhelmed emotion that can happen right at the beginning of that entire process. So, so then as someone's doing that and they start trying to narrow down what's available to them, that initial goal when they come to your website, that very first thing they're trying to do is actually eliminate you. Mm-hmm. They're trying to say, you know what, this isn't what I'm looking for. They don't have what I want, right? Because they're overwhelmed with all the information, all the choices, all the things that they have to work at. So their very first thing is trying to get that initial, do they have what I'm looking for in a second, of trying to evaluate that. And if it's no, then you're gone, right? You're off the list. Now we
call that a bounce, right?
Yeah, exactly. Now let's ignore the fact we're making a big assumption that you're actually showing up in the top page of Google here, because if you're on page 3, they're not even making it that far, right? They're not even making it that far to even give you a chance to look at.
So we're shopping by process of elimination, not inclusion. So
initially,
yeah, right? Because it's there, and I think that's important to remember, is that it's probably a somewhat of a frustrating experience when I first do that Google search, and I'm trying to find information, and then I'm going on websites and I'm not finding what I'm looking for, and so then I start to eliminate and cross off the list and try to narrow down to get the information I'm looking for. So that's I think important aspect that you bring up. So let's talk a little bit more about customer interactions. So I think what you're saying is that first interaction is when they land on your homepage or whatever page is indexed that they happen to find of yours. But then where does emotion fit into customer online interactions from that point going forward?
So it's about creating this idea of trust. Right. So again, do you have what I am looking for? Is it in the location that I'm looking for? Kind of some initial questions. Can I find that information quickly? Because I'm only going to look so hard. You may have exactly what I want, but if I have to work too hard to find it and answer that question, then I move on. Right. Trust gets into things like design quality. Right. Have you ever eliminated a website because it's ugly? Of course you have. It may not even be conscious.
Slow
right?
loading, bad pictures. Yeah,
absolutely. Right. Just that frustration again of I can't find what I'm looking for. And it's like, gosh, these guys build beautiful homes, but this website looks like it was done by a third grader. It's like that turns me off. Right. We judge people and companies based on these design ideas. So again, trust is really that idea, avoiding that frustration. And then if you look, Rick, at some of the things Zillow did a study a couple of years ago where they talked about how many people consider new construction but end up buying resales instead, and it's just this huge number. I think it was somewhere in the 65% consider new home construction, only 9% actually end up buying new construction. One of the big challenges is understanding the process. Confusion, uncertainty about what happens next, right? When there's this resale home, it's like, it's a home, it's here. I know exactly what it is, and I'm comfortable. I've lived in one potentially somewhere in my life, so I know what I'm getting, type of thing. Whereas with new construction, there's a lot more uncertainty. So again, the website can help overcome that with more transparency, more information, more guidance of what happens next. Where do I go? We can't assume our buyers understand this. We do this every day as builders and builder marketers. We understand, but our buyers, this is like once or twice in a lifetime that they go through this process.
What I hear you saying, Greg, is that there fear of the unknown, with these people, because the reason resale is more easy is because I can walk through the house. I can see the neighborhood. I know what amenities are there. There's a price right in front of me. It's like those unknowns are removed. And of course, realtors are the same way. Realtors also gravitate towards resale because they understand resale. You say resale, I always call it used houses.
Yes, sure.
Toenails in the carpet, used houses. So they gravitate towards because the unknowns have been removed. So I think I caught you saying a couple of things. They want to know, number one, location. Do build where they're considering. And I think you also said something about have what they're looking for. So maybe the type of homes. I remember I had a conversation once years ago with a custom builder, and I said, you don't have any floor plans on your website. He goes, and his response was, well, if I put my floor plans on my website, I'm worried that people will steal them and my competitors will take my buyers. And I know I see you smiling here too. And to which I said to him, I said, look, you are, by not being transparent, by essentially saying, this is my intellectual property and I'm not going to put that out there, you're going to eliminate a lot more people because they cannot find what they're looking for on your site than you will ever lose to your competitors. What do you think of that thought?
I absolutely agree. Right? People want information. I mean, and that's why they're on the website in the first place, right? They're looking for information. We have to provide it to them. We have to give them what they're looking for, and let them move down that journey, if you will, that buyer journey, that buyer process. And when they're ready to talk to us, they'll talk to us. And the one who's been transparent in today's world, especially with the demographic that's grown up with the internet in their pocket, they expect information at the snap of a finger, right? And if you don't provide it, they're moving on.
24/7, they want that information.
They're moving on.
So let's I guess paint the picture here. I'm a prospective home buyer. And I think statistically also, you said most people look at new construction. Zillow said like 65%. I think the younger the demographic, that grows a little bit more. I think the vast majority of first-time home buyers out there today would prefer a new home versus a used house. So let's just say, as a builder, I show up and I have a nice website. It's got pretty colors. It's got the information on it. So what's the immediate goal? So I'm a prospective buyer. I land on this site. What's my immediate goal?
So my next step in that whole thing is, if I see what I'm looking for, then you need to guide me through in what you want me to do next. Right. Okay. And sometimes in the marketing world, we call this call to action, right? It's this idea of, don't assume that they know what to do next, right? And that's as simple as the big button that says request information or call now or, come visit or schedule an appointment, all these different types of action invitations that you can put on the website. But it's all about getting the contact information now so that you can start to have a conversation and can start that process of engaging. Now, of course, we're moving more and more to that engagement happening on the website itself too, with a chat type of a feature, with an online sales counselor type of role that's becoming really even more critical than it used to be. So sometimes, traditionally it was all like, okay, they're going to send us an email, they're going to, type in, fill out a form, and then tomorrow or the next day or whatever, we'll get back to them and schedule an appointment. Whatever. No, they're in the moment, right? If we can get them that information fast and get those answers to them quickly, that keeps them moving, keeps that process.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I think a lot of builders think like, what is a reasonable amount of time to follow up with a web lead? A lot of them would probably say, well, 24 hours. Like, I'll get, within one day. And the last statistic I heard, I think it was 5 minutes. Ideally, you want to get them on the site. And so my contention is 1 minute. I want to get back to them within 1 minute while they're on the site, while they're in the moment. What do you think of that?
I think It makes a huge difference when you can do that, but it's a little overwhelming to ponder, right? Because it means you've got to have resources sitting there, and it also means you might need some technology to help,
Yep.
to do some of that, because
Yeah,
it's almost impossible for a person to kind of be on top of it completely by themselves.
Yep. Yeah, we use a booking bot called Eliza, and so Eliza is on duty 24/7, and when it's after hours, Eliza discloses that she is a booking bot. She says, "Hey, I'm the booking assistant for so and so builders. Would you like to schedule an appointment tomorrow with one of our new home advisors to get more information on whatever they've requested?" So yeah, we try to be, get back to that person as soon as possible. So their immediate goal is to tell them what to do. As far as content, I've always contended that there's really three things that every new home buyer is looking for. They want to know what they can build, where they can build it, and essentially about how much it's going to cost. So for content, I've always said, look, go into your Google Analytics, right? You can put tracking code on your website and just look at what are your most visited pages, and that'll pretty much tell you what is your home buyers are after, your prospective buyers. So historically, we found that floor plans, available homes, community locations, and then if you have an ability where you can do some sort of a budget or pricing tool to help people. What would you suggest for a builder as far as content is really like a must-have content that's critical?
So, Rick, I think what you described, I completely agree with. So now the question becomes about how do you present that, right? Because you can present that like in a spreadsheet,
Yeah, right. Oh gosh.
and you totally lose the emotional connection piece that we've been talking about, right? So how do you present that information that helps somebody really start to connect to it? So location, it's like, well, it could be an address. Well, that doesn't really tell me anything, right? Can it be a map where I can see it now in some type of proximity? Do I have some graphics show, oh, it's in the such and such school district, so I get a feel for where that location is, or oh, look at all the shopping or the other types of things that are nearby that might matter to me. So trying to figure out, even location can start to have an emotional connection, right? Of how we do that, right? Floor plans, yes, floor plans can be, ugly black and white little architectural drawings from an architect, or they can be beautiful, so when we say floor plans, what does that really mean, right? The 3D kind of walkthroughs, the ability to really visualize this home. Interactive floor plans where you can turn options on and off and start to build. We have a partner that works with those that talks about that people will spend 20 to 30 minutes customizing floor plans with some of these tools. They'll drag furniture around and move it in the rooms and everything else. And gosh, by the time that they save that, if they've spent 20 to 30 minutes playing around with it, that's a connection now. That's a commitment emotionally to you versus the other builder that they may have looked at. And so all of a sudden, these types of tools, make a huge difference. The photography is critical. And again, trying to help them understand, what does this look like? What am I going to see? And the transparency with that too, right? If you've got the used car lot next door, you're not doing anybody any favors if you're not transparent about that either,
Sure.
And then they show up and they're like, wait a minute, this is not what I was looking for. And I don't think most of our new homes are next door to used car lots, but
well, what I hear you saying over and over again is transparency, and it's like you got to give them the information online so that they can process it. But what that does though is that creates, if I'm correct in interpreting you, it creates that emotional connection by being transparent, giving that information. And let's face it, as me as a salesperson, I would much rather talk to a lead that has gone through that process, that has that information, and then they've still committed to wanting to have a conversation with me, versus somebody that doesn't have information, or at least has maybe bad information, and then I talk to them, I find out they're a bad lead. Because I think it's okay for a lead to self-qualify too. I mean, literally, like if your entry-level homes are $1 million, you really don't want leads that have a budget of 500 coming in, and vice versa. If you really don't build over 500 or build townhomes versus single family, so on and so forth, you want to give them as much information so they know I'm in the right spot. So this leads me to my next question, Greg, which is, Okay, so that you talked about, that's what's positive and creates, helps them with their immediate goal. Tell them what to do, give them the information, be transparent. How about that negative interaction which causes them to eliminate you? What does that look like?
I mean, we hinted a little bit at frustration, right? Lack of finding what I'm looking for. There's some technical components of just slow loading and some of these things where people give up, right? And that's more of a technical, how's your site hosted and structured and put together. But it's just that I don't know what I don't know, right? It's that you mentioned the word, the uncertainty or fear. Fear is an emotion, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's not just the fear of the unknown, it's the fear of making a mistake, right? I mean, a home purchase is one, if not the largest investments or purchases that somebody makes in their lifetime. So I don't want to get this wrong. I don't want to mess this up, right? And when we get to the point where we're so scared of making a mistake, we just freeze and we make no decision. We don't move forward at all. And so how do we overcome that fear? It's with knowledge and information. It's clarity. I mean, it's things like reviews, right? And look at all these other happy people that have had an enjoyable experience. Okay, well, if Rick did it, then maybe it's okay, right? He's been there. Somebody else has done this before. Showing that process. How do we move them through? There's a lot that goes into a new home, right? There's a lot of steps in the whole thing. We see people, with kind of some flow charts. We see videos where they walk people through things. Video connects with people emotionally much more than text does now. So the more you can do with video, the better. But yeah, it's really about eliminating those barriers to moving to the next step.
So I want to plug you here because I think a lot of people don't look at this. I'm going to build a website, and they usually look for the cheapest option out there and to get the website up, right? And then what happens is you have issues. It's not done properly. You've got slow loading images. It's not formatting properly on mobile. There's all sorts of issues on it. That becomes frustrating for that prospective buyer. And they're like, you know what, this is too hard, the information, next, and they eliminate you. So just want to, really try to impress upon anybody, any builders here, is that, man, this is your representative here, is your website, and it's open 24/7. And to not have the best representation out there, I just encourage everyone, do not skimp on this. And the same thing is, like, if this is your storefront, this is your model home. When I worked a model home, Greg, every single day we were checking on that model home. You know what? We made sure the windows were clean. If there was light bulbs burned out, we got rid of the cobwebs. We cleaned it regularly. If it snowed, we shoveled. If the grass needed to be cut, we cut the grass. If there was garbage in the yard, we pulled weeds. But we made sure that model home was always looking nice because we didn't know when our next visitor was coming in. And I think your website is the same thing. You have to go in and actively manage that and have a good web partner like yourself that can take care of it. If there's an issue that comes up, can fix it quickly, so that you're always looking your best. And I'm sure you could tell horror stories of people that have come with you, and you see what they have out there for a website and going like, oh my gosh, this is costing you hundreds, if not millions of dollars in lost revenue each year because of the way you're presented.
Rick, I think one thing that I like to encourage builders to step back and think about from a website investment standpoint, if a website becomes your best salesperson, right? What would you commission your best salesperson, right? For what they do, right? How many homes at that commission rate, pick your commission rate, do you need to sell for your website to be paid for? Right. And how do we look at that from, it's usually one or two, it's usually not very many. So you don't need a huge doubling of your sales to make a website improvements really cost, get that return that you're looking for.
And one of the misnomers out there too is that a lot of builders say, well, I get most of my business from referrals, or we get walk-in traffic, or we get a sign call, or we have a lot of realtor business. Interestingly enough, what I have found is that even if it's a referral or a realtor or a walk-in traffic, once they make contact with you, the next thing they do is they go to your website. So that can actually be part of the sales prevention team. Like, you may have a nice website and a nice location, but they go to the website and they see some issues, or perhaps you're not managing your online reputation and then they see some bad reviews out there on you. So yeah, it can help you make the sale. It definitely can help you prevent you from creating a sale too. So I think it's disingenuous to think that because you get a lot of referral business, you don't need to invest in your website, because it really does is a representation of who you are.
And to that, Rick, I think there's a whole other group that gets the recommendation of the referral and they look at the website first before they call you.
Yes.
You know, there's
Absolutely.
the ones that call and check, but it's like, oh, you know, Rick told me that I should check out ABC Builders. And so I go look at that. And before I call, so how many didn't call?
Yep.
You know,
and because normally they're getting 2 or 3 referrals. It's not just one. And so you're right. Yeah, that's a very good point. So let's just to kind of wrap this up for everybody here. So what are some tools and techniques that builders can use to create emotional connections and then build trust with their website visitors? Anything that you would recommend that we haven't discussed yet?
You know, I think we've hit the highlights, right? So it's about transparency of content. You know, where do you build and what do you build is kind of, can I answer that question in like 1 second, right? I mean, you know, and that's just kind of that first one. Then it's about educating on the process. It's about giving them tools to see, you know, again, that's the great photos and renderings. It's the interactive type floor plan tools, the virtual tours of homes that help. And then it's about that trust, that social trust, if you will, with reviews from buyers and others that work with you, that tell people, hey, these people do what they say they're going to do, right? And they follow through with what's going to be out there.
I want to add one more question, which is, I think, somewhat relevant today. So 2020 came along, and if you would have asked me in February 2020, can you sell a $1 million custom home sight unseen? I would have said, forget about it, you know. And then literally like May of 2020, I had clients that were selling $1 million custom homes sight unseen, where essentially they did all of their work online. So I know that one of the hot topics today, especially with larger production builders, is, can I sell a home online? You know, the buy it now button, you know, the eBay model or the Amazon type model. I have mixed feelings on it, because I think there's so many things that go into it. In one hand, it would be like, yeah, I would love to do that from a marketing standpoint. Could I make that sale without having to talk to anybody? But on the other hand, I'm a little bit nervous about leading somebody down a road that maybe is not proven yet, or I'm going against human nature, meaning that what's the human component? Can I really pull that out of the equation? But I'd really like to get your thoughts, Craig, because I know you've dealt with this. What are your thoughts on this, buying a home without the human element?
Well, I think, Rick, my first thought is, gosh, that's a whole nother show. We get get together. Right, yeah, right. But I guess my quick reaction to it is, first of all, everything we've talked about today comes before that. Right. Mm-hmm. So we have to do all of those other things first, right? Because now you're talking about someone who hasn't visited and needs even more information on the website to be able to make, again, they're trying to make a decision. They don't want to make a mistake. What do you do to help them feel comfortable with that decision? I personally believe that adding transactional tools to the website is going to be kind of become standard for a lot of builders. I do not believe that the unassisted home purchase is going to be the norm. I still think that, and I don't even think necessarily it'll be the unvisited home will be the norm, but I think this idea that I'm still going to have questions, I'm still going to want to talk to a person. I still may want to come walk models or walk there or drive the community or whatever, but then I may go home and say, okay, now that I've looked at the 3 and I've narrowed in, I want to be on this street versus that street or whatever, I may come back home and make my final choice on the website and go ahead and make that purchase or that reservation, if you will, you know, at 10 o'clock at night when the sales office is closed, because I finally, again, there's an emotional part of, we just made a decision. We want to move forward. We want to save it. We don't want somebody else to walk in tomorrow morning and get the one lot that we really want, you know, and type of a thing. So that's an emotional decision too, right? That protect my decision kind of a thing that ties into it. So I see that being something that the website can help with. But I don't know that I've never talked to anybody. I've never asked a single question. It's 100% self-service. That I don't think is it can happen, sure. But is it going to be the common path? I don't believe so.
I think the same thing. You know, I think the one potential difference there is that if I get a production builder that is building condo builder or production type builder that has lots of spec homes out there and they've got great Matterport tours and they can say all the things are clicking right, that potential you can make that transaction online. But I do agree, at least right now, would be the exception to the rule. Now you mentioned one thing, you mentioned transactional tool. And I know you work a lot with e-commerce, but do you define transactional tool as, let's say I go out and I drive the community and I see a home site that I love, that I could go back on the website and I could like essentially reserve my home site and I could go through and I could sign a contract and maybe put down a deposit on a credit card in order to reserve that site? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. When I talk about a transaction, right, it's some type of transaction where there's a payment involved, right? Where
okay.
or a contract type of, DocuSign or whatnot,
Yep.
similar tool to make an agreement that has some force. Now it may not be done, right? It may be holding it for 72 hours until, or something like or a reservation or something, so that I know that I've got that protected for me until I can get there and make the appointment. Sure. Or it could be, possible to move all the way through that, and we're moving earnest money around and all kinds of things. Taking credit card payments online is something we learned how to do a long time ago. Exactly. So that's not new.
Signing documents electronically, virtually everybody does as well. So that's something that I think most consumers are comfortable with as well. It's just a matter of putting the ability for the new home prospective buyer to do it without the assist of a salesperson, like having to manually send it to them, having it there and say, yeah, I want to request a reserve. So yeah, that's interesting. I do agree with that. And I think that was, like you said, that's today, that's right now. Someone can be doing that, especially if you're in a hot community and you want to do some sort of a launch and create a interest list, where somebody's interested in a new phase or a new community coming out, and then you allow them to opt in by putting some money down, like to get first right of refusal for, a choice in that community. So, Greg, it's been absolutely delightful to hear your knowledge and your expertise on this. But if somebody wants to know more about Blue Tangerine or you, how would they get in touch with you?
So you can reach me at Greg, Greg, at bluetangerine.com. Of course, our website, bluetangerine.com. And I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn if you want to connect there.
You are very active on LinkedIn. Yes, you are, for sure. And I'll put a link for that right below the video here as well. But Greg, we thank you so much for your time and your expertise. And hopefully that you'll have lots of people talking to you here and getting more information about your website services, because you do a great job with it. So,
well, thanks, Rick. It's been fun.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. We'll see you next time.